Welcome to Conversate, a podcast where we engage in conversation. This week, I, Kevin, have on the show Dala Beard, one of our members from all the way back in 1991, and we talk about mercy. Dala shares a little bit about her history, what this idea of mercy has looked like in her experience, and some really practical ways of how we can get involved in a ministry of mercy here in town. So as always, we hope you find something useful for you. Maybe it starts another conversation on your end, but we hope you enjoy it.
Cheers.
Well, cheers, Dala. Good to be with you here this morning. Glad to have you here on the Conversate podcast. For those of you tuning in, I have with me here Dala Beard. So this is the kind of a funny thing as a newer pastor. I don't have a good sense of who's been around for how long.
Oh, been around life for a long time, it seems, but been around the Copper Country since 1991.
Okay.
We came here in the winter, actually, of all times to move here, from Louisiana, even though we're from Indiana. But John was at LSU, so we came up from Baton Rouge to the Copper Country.
No kidding.
And I was in like La La Land because it was beautiful and snowy, and John is gripping the wheel going, what have we gotten into? So we have been here that long and we love it.
Wow, okay. Wow, yeah, so 31 years now.
Yeah, you're better at mental math.
I like math.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And what brought you up to the Copper Country?
John's job at Tech.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wondered that.
Yep. And, we had talked about living maybe back in the Midwest, which this is kind of the Midwest compared to Louisiana.
Oh, sure.
And I was hankering for seasons and fall colors and snow. And so he said, I brought you to the place of snow. So anyway, we're thankful to be here, and we love it.
Yeah.
It is far. Our siblings and nieces and nephews are all in mostly Indiana, but we love it here. This is home.
So are you Hoosiers? Does that mean
Yes,
anything
we
to you?
were.
Okay.
Well, we are Hoosiers, but we are also Yoopers now.
Well, there
this
you
is
go.
the longest place we've ever lived. You know, so yeah.
Yeah. Wait, and there is something. Winter is it's a trying time to travel up here.
Yeah.
But there is something very magical about.
Oh, it's beautiful, and even I don't do the snow moving and all that, but we both get excited about those first snows and even the blizzards sometimes are just kind of cool, even though they're also, as we get older, they're a little more of a challenge.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it too. It's like, if you're going to have winter, I don't just want cold. There might as well be something falling from the sky and kind of prettying up the place.
It is. It's not gray and steel and cold. It's sparkly.
Yeah.
See? So
there you go.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so 91 up to the UP.
Yeah.
At what point did you get connected to St. Peter?
Oh, right off the bat.
Okay.
I was raised in the Missouri Synod Lutheran denomination, whatever, and so it wasn't a matter of what church should we go to. You just moved to your new community. John is not a Lutheran, but a good Christian man, and says, sure, let's go visit the Lutheran church. So we started going to Saints Peter and Paul over in Hancock, and then that's just what you do. You go to your local church, and you blend in and make the best of where God's put you.
Yeah, and who was pastoring at the time?
Pastor Paul.
Pastor Paul,
and and it was, I had been in older congregations, older buildings, and so I was used to that to some degree, and it was very similar in a lot of ways to some places I had been. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, but you're exactly
so a long
right.
time. Really, but there are definitely people here who have a more history with Saints Peter and Paul.
Yeah, generational.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's some folks though I look at and I think, man, these pillars of our congregation, and then I talk to them and I learn they've only been here like 2 years longer than me. I'm like, oh, really?
Right. Yeah.
So, but that's neat. It's neat to see and hear from people of all kind of.
Yep. All connections.
Yeah. But you're right. So you come to a new community and you say, hey, well, here's the Lutheran church. We're going to go check it out. And I do think there is something to, like God kind of had, I don't know, he's looking out. Right?
Absolutely. And
it's to me, it's very peculiar how you become a part of a community because you're an outsider, but you're coming in.
Right.
And then before long, all of a sudden you're kind of, this is I don't know, it becomes almost your family.
It is family. It's church. It's church family. But I'm going to credit my mom especially, and dad. But mom, I mean, that's just what you did. You found a good church and then a good grocery store wherever you moved, and you put down your tablecloth, and this is home. You know, I mean, you make it home, and God helps you make it that way. But for sure, finding a good church has to be where it gets started. So, and it. You know, you're familiar with the way they do things, and I don't know. So
Well, we're glad God brought you here, Dala.
We are too. Yep.
And we're glad, you know, if you're listening today or watching today, that you know God, we believe would have been a part of that process too.
Absolutely.
That you're here listening, and that's kind of the same thing when I think we come to a Sunday, right? To a Sunday worship experience, or really any time we're encountering God's Word. He's always got something for us.
Right.
You know. It's not always, I don't know if you, like sometimes when I do devotional stuff, it can be hard, right? You read the devotion, you're kind of like, this isn't really where I am
Speaking to
today.
me right today,
But God's, I think Isaiah 55, right, talks about when I send my word, like this bread from heaven, it doesn't return to me empty.
Void, exactly.
Exactly,
Right.
It goes out, it accomplishes something.
Yes.
You know, and the Spirit kind of...
And as a pastor, I'm sure you really put a lot of hope in that, because when you get up there to preach, I mean, you got a whole room full of people, and they all are coming with different concerns or anxieties or pleasures or whatever, and your words, you know, seasoned by God, will make a big difference to each person somewhere.
That's right, and Aaron and I have talked about that. It's just kind of a mystery because you don't know where everyone's coming from, and you're bringing your own. I mean, I'm bringing my own stuff in too. You know.
Sure.
So I'll be curious, kind of on that note, Dala, to hear then this last Sunday.
Mercy.
That's right. Mercy Me. I actually, do you know that band, Mercy Me?
No.
Okay, so Mercy Me is you ever heard the song, I can only imagine when all my life is done? It's a song about heaven or something.
You know, when I asked you about Lucille Ball, and you were a little, Lucille Ball, I love Lucy. Well, I'm kind of the same about Mercy. No, I don't know, but
Mercy Me. Okay. Well, I looked up their kind of history of the band, because I thought maybe there's some big, deep, profound reason.
Yeah.
But no, his grandmother used to call him, and when he was at home all the time, because he was trying to work on his music, and so he didn't have like a job he was out to. She would always be surprised that he was at home and able to pick up the phone and would say, Mercy Me. So.
Well, I gotta say, I think only, we're always learning, let's face it. We can never know everything. But so this whole difference between grace and mercy, you brought it up, but then also I think Pastor Aaron has brought it up in some years gone by, as well as Pastor Weber, and probably even before that. But it's easy to get those things kind of blended together, and they are related, but they are different. And so it's always good to hear that little different twist on, you know, how is grace different from mercy? And
what would you tell us, Dala?
Well, I mean, now that I'm learning that, it's more about mercy is when you're pleading for someone to be more lenient with you because you probably deserved something worse. But you're just, please be lenient as you dole out whatever it is that I deserve, but be merciful to me, you know. And I guess I think of that, because when you mentioned about mercy, I thought about, I've had a lot of elderly people recently in my life die, aunts and uncles, and my sister and I have just prayed that God would be merciful as they were dying, because they were struggling with their brain failing them or their body failing them, and you just want their leaving of this earth to be as peaceful as, or as merciful as God would allow it to be.
Sure.
You know, so that is one place where I thought about mercy, about have mercy on these people in their last days on earth, you know. Even though they're going to heaven, make this departure more peaceful or more placid or whatever. So, or just mercy for people that are struggling, you know, that God would help them with that. So I don't know. I think of that. And now, you brought up, though, another part about mercy, about people we don't know that we're trying to interact with, you know. And that is what we need to hear, too. It's not just those that we're connected to that we're concerned about, but what about some of these people that we don't really care about and we should care about? You know, because God's been loving and merciful to us, and we ought to extend that same kind of leniency and love toward other people, you know. So that's a good challenge, Pastor Kevin, because I don't think it comes naturally.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, this is kind of interesting, the whole way you framed it, because I don't think my mind would have gone to like end of life, for instance, and that whole idea of, you know, kind of a merciful death.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing, because like I told you, I've been praying for mercy a lot lately, and it is different, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's but it fits well. At least as I'm thinking of, you know, when you just started talking, I thought, well, when I read even the Beatitude, you know,
right.
The first four to me were kind of like more extreme. They felt.
Yes.
Then the merciful one, which just didn't feel like quite as extreme, kind of felt, oh, this is
a little softer.
A little softer than like mourning or starving, you know, hungering, all that. And you know, but mercy, it's like, oh, that sounds nice, but kind of like buried in the idea of mercy is that reality of, I'm in this space or place because of something I've done or I've contributed to, or this is deserved.
Situation, right.
Yeah. And end of life's interesting because I don't know that everyone would see death, you know, kind of in that frame, right?
Right. Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like, but we all deserve death. I mean, it's not what we've done, it's just our condition, our sinful condition. And I know that in talking with people, we sometimes get tired of hearing about the broken world, but the truth is, it is, and we are, and so we got to deal with this. How do you deal with it? With God's love, grace, and His mercy. And so we know these dear people are going to end up in heaven. That's how I know that, because I know their faith, I know what they stood for. But just lighten up on them, God, when they're in bed dying, you know, just, I don't know. That's when I think of mercy. Or like when Pastor Aaron once talked about him, or was it you, about playing that game. Don't bend my thumb anymore, please. You know, it's hurting. Please lighten up a little bit. I mean, that was just a game, but the same idea. Yeah. But that actually, when I read Aaron's thing too, I thought of so I played on the Concordia Seminary soccer team. Oh.
And I'm not a soccer player. But I was, you know, like a moderately good player on the team, because none of us were really, I mean, there was a couple guys who had played, you know, previously. So we just got walloped, you know, for the whole season. We lost every single game, and there were plenty of games where we got mercied.
Oh, okay.
You know, right? Like you get to halfway through the game and they already got 9 goals on you, and they say, you guys go home. And
that is part of sports. That whole
the mercy rule.
Yes,
right?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that whole idea of like your, you know, whatever's going on is just bearing down. It's beaten down. It is rough.
Yeah.
And maybe the situation is something that you actively did to deserve it, but maybe it's not something you actively did either.
Yeah. It's just part of this.
The brokenness.
Yes, the world we're in. Yeah. And sometimes that seems so unfair. I mean, but there again, it's never said it would be fair.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, when you think of kind of God's mercy, then, like, are there kind of like examples you think of in your life or in the world where it's kind of you see that that letting up, or you see, like, what does it look like for mercy to be applied? Do you think?
Well, and we did not have children, but I was a teacher, and there were times when I just had to take a deep breath and think, now, I really am so upset with this kid, you know, but just take a breath and just think, now, how should you really handle this in a more merciful way? You know, whether the scolding or the discipline or the consequences of what this little kid did, and you know, I prayed a lot as a teacher that God would help me with this, because you don't want to do anything real damaging.
You felt the gravity of the kids.
I know. And so, for sure, parents or teachers, youth leaders, I don't care who are dealing with kids and disciplining and loving little people, to be fair and just, but also merciful as you deal with them, you know, because it all goes back to, like, God is that way with us, right? I mean, and so should we not, we're supposed to imitate God the best we can with His help, or at least ask Him to help us with that. So to me, that would be an example in real life. Mercy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great example.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think this says something about me, but maybe other listeners, like maybe you'll identify with me, and I kind of hope you don't, to be honest. But it's odd. I had this picture of God for a long time, that he was kind of that, like the justness of God or the justice of God.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of like, bad things happen and you feel like, oh, I'm getting kind of this kickback from something I must have done.
I know why this is happening.
Yeah. But what you say is absolutely right. That picture of God is, we're taking part of God's nature. He is just.
Yes.
But
yes.
God, I read a book recently that said God has a name, and he tells us about his name kind of in the beginning of Exodus. So he's like got the people out of Egypt, he's rescued them, and he says, he kind of gives this like self description where he says, I am Yahweh. He says, Yahweh, Yahweh. And then he says, a loving and compassionate God, steadfast, right? Love. But he goes on to say, like, kind of like in the commandments, I won't leave unpunished these things.
Yeah.
But they come as a kind of an afterpiece. Like they're secondary to God's nature, right? And I think we see this the most in Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Where God, what did humanity deserve, right? What was the just thing to do, What would have been good, right, and salutary would not have been Jesus on the cross.
Right.
Right?
No, we all would have been hanging on different stake somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
But so God leads with that mercy, and I guess James, when he says mercy triumphs over judgment, we kind of see that in Jesus.
That's a good one to remember.
You know?
Because I think our nature is to be judged.
Oh, it just comes secondhand, right?
It does, and I don't want to make excuses, but obviously I am. But it's just easier to jump to that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, that's why it's so hard, I think.
Right.
I would imagine as a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know.
That's why I said take a breath, and that doesn't mean that every time, or as a parent, every time you do the right thing, but you do try to just ask God to help you do the right thing.
Yeah.
By His power, actually.
Sure, and it doesn't take away, like if you're trying to create boundaries or set up rules or have structure.
Yeah, exactly.
These are all good things. Sometimes we like swing on the pendulum so far the other way and say, all those things are bad.
Right,
no, God gives us commandments because they're good. These boundaries are good.
Absolutely.
But man, is He ever patient and merciful
with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that picture of, and you kind of connected those dots. We're God's children. That's how That's how He thinks of us. He says, "Call me Father.
Yeah.
You're my dear children." And how does a teacher or a parent, lovingly deal with a child? You got a lot of opportunities every day to kind of incur the this is what should have happened. This is what happened.
Well, that's why He's also forgiving. And we can count on that.
Yeah, emulate that.
But the mercy too. When you were talking about people, like I said earlier, outside of our circle who need God's love and help, and sometimes we just, I don't know. I'll say I. Maybe others aren't, but we want to attach judgment to why they are where they are, and that is good to be reminded that hey, we are all in that spot one way or the other. So just hold back on that, And there again, I do believe we just have to constantly ask God to help us with this, because there maybe are some things that are easy for us to do depending on our personalities, but for the most part, I think it's God working in us that does these good things, in the first place. So we've got to help me to have more understanding of these people, or be more merciful, because it's easy to not be.
Yeah. I was, I don't know, the political thing always gets interesting, my mind went there a little bit, like in what I was saying, and I'm not trying to, I think that Christianity totes a really interesting line in the political world, which is, because either side's response, let's say, to groups who are in need, right?
Yes.
Think about the poor, right? Just political platform-wise,
right?
There's two kind of different approaches. But I don't know that either approach is necessarily fueled kind of by God's heart. Because on the one hand, you got a platform that, could be maybe insulting to the poor or the downtrodden because they say, you can't figure it out yourself. You don't have the means or the understanding or the intelligence. So we'll just we'll get everything here for you so that you don't have to learn. They want to kind of pad things, right?
Yeah.
To help you get by.
Which may not help at all, really.
And I think a lot of people have experienced that, maybe in own family settings, or people have tried to help. And so then it's, you kind of, as humans, we maybe swing to that other side where we say, well, you can't trust them at all, it doesn't help to give them anything. So kind of just let the market do what it does, and they'll kind of have to learn. But God seems to kind of intersect it where it's not, the picture isn't us de-elevating ourselves because we're so much better or higher, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're equals, right?
And that is a hard stand to take, but that is where it is,
Yeah, and I think some of the most powerful movements, or organizations that have helped people are the ones that they don't come in. Actually, this is how, when we do the Detroit mission trip, Camp Restore.
Sure.
We don't go in and just kind of clean up the area because they can't clean it up themselves.
You work together and you share I don't know who you are with these folks.
And we're just resources for them.
Right.
We actually connect to community leaders who live there, who have the passion to kind of hey, we want to elevate, this neighborhood.
That's got to be more effective in the end, in the long run.
Yeah, they said that back in the day when they first started, it was more, bring groups in, we'll just hit this spot, we don't talk to anybody. And then a week later, it's in the same condition it was before. Because it takes more than a handout, I suppose. It does take a relationship.
And that's probably how God's mercy is too. I mean, it's not. He works with us, and as He delivers that mercy to us, I think He probably works along with us so that we, move on and practice it in our lives. So. Yeah,
and I love that idea of relational.
Yeah.
He works with us. He
works with us.
Walks with us.
Yeah.
He's not as maybe far off as sometimes we imagine.
Right. And that's why it's important, like we started talking about this church family business.
Oh, sure.
But that is where we get fed too here, is just when you see that in other people, and or even just an emphasis of a church. This is part of the emphasis. So everybody is hearing this, and they may not jump on board right away, but they know that this is part of the Christian life, is to be this way, and it becomes more of a priority than maybe it was before.
Yeah, so, kind of goes back to some of those maybe human inclinations that we have, and that's true of me too. I mean, just to put my cards on the table, I, in general, it's like the Good Samaritan story. Things can seem like an inconvenience or a burden. It's I really don't want to help. I don't want to spend the time or the resources or even to...
The risk.
Yeah.
There's a risk.
Yeah, I remember getting, burned one time outside of a restaurant. Fella was, asking for money for this or that thing, and you get the whole sob story, right? And so you're and I'm some poor college kid, whatever, and I was like, well, okay, so I give him, $20 or whatever I had, and then I saw him, he walked over and his family's sitting in an Escalade, SUV that's running, the car's on and everything, and it seems wow, this, I don't know, pieces of the story don't, but you hate to distrust, automatically, but sometimes we get burned, or it seems.
Right. And then I just say, you know what, God knows what's going on here, and He will deal with this. I mean, whether you may have felt bad, I would have felt bad. I mean, we've heard those stories before from Pastor Weber and other about times when things went awry.
Right.
And so you just say, well, God knows the hearts of those people and us, and He'll work it all together, and it'll get worked out in the end. And so don't sweat over it.
That's a good point. I think maybe Ecclesiastes talks that way about God, or maybe it's Matthew. I can't remember. But anyways, this idea that God, He doles out. He gives life and breath to everybody. Right.
The rain falls on the just and the unjust, or whatever. We all get those blessings, and
And He's impartial about it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange.
We are not. I am not impartial. Help me. But so I was thinking too, mercy, obviously Pastor Kevin, you know your scripture very well, and I know some scripture, but I don't always have the stuff to it, the verse and chapter, but about the Lord's mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for his mercy endures forever. That's the whole thing. But I just remember that because it's there for us to know it's always there, his mercy, and that we should be, growing in his mercy and learning how to use it in our lives. But anyway, it helps to hear those reminders in those verses.
Yeah.
To feed us.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to maybe wrap up here just real quick. I'd love to get really specific or concretize.
Yes.
With this idea of people in need.
Yes.
People who need some mercy shown their
Right.
way, or wherever they're at in life, they need some
Right.
assistance, help. As you think of our community, because I'm still kind of getting to know even our community, is there any pocket or people group or organization that you're familiar with, or like some space that you're like, hey, you know what? I do know of a need. It's this one, and if you're interested, this is a thing that's happening.
You're asking for an advertisement.
Yeah, if you want free advertising.
I don't know. Well, we know that we'd talked earlier once about Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, which those dear people are not always financially needy people by any means.
Yeah.
It's just the emotional and the social, the camaraderie they could get from other people in our community.
Yeah.
And so those are needs. There may not be like a homeless person that you see down at Camp Restore or something like that, but our community does a wonderful job with visiting and befriending elderly people. And we have plenty of elderly people in the Copper Country. And Pastor Kevin, they do a wood program up here. We've never helped with that, but there are still a lot of older people in our community who heat their homes with a wood stove.
Sure.
And they may live back down in the valley or in a wood somewhere, and there are young people from Tech and other places who split wood, who haul wood to these dear old people who couldn't get it otherwise, and that's what's keeping them warm and cozy and comfortable. That's one of their small missions. We have never helped with that, but we've helped with just the holiday meals and things that they do, where these folks, their children have left the area and now live out in Washington or down in North Carolina, but they wanted to stay here. But who do they spend Thanksgiving with? Or who do they spend Christmas with, or Easter? And so Little Brothers does a great job of, with COVID, we've had to deliver meals to them. But prior to COVID, they had all these different sites, at this church's fellowship hall, or at this community building, or where we helped was up at Mohawk, and there's it's called an alternative school, but it used to be an elementary school. But their little gym is where, and their cafeteria is where we would help prepare a meal. And there might only be 15 to 25 old people come there. And then there'd be all these other people there. But we eat with them, and we prepare a meal, and it's a socializing time, and it's a friendship time. Sometimes you could develop friendships that would go on, and sometimes it's just for that day.
Okay.
But it provides a need for people who otherwise would be alone, So, and they do many other things. They transport people who have doctor's appointments they can't get to. They have visitors. You just align yourself with an elderly person and you visit them once a week or something. It's a great outreach to all the elderly people we have in our area. And then I just think we just need to be on the lookout for people in our lives, whether it's in our church or our neighborhood, or like when I was a teacher, there were some just sweet little kids that were just little bits of ragamuffins. That's what I call them. And you just love them, and try to befriend. As a teacher, you could their parents to give support. However, you could do that through your school or whatever. I'm aware of the. Just today when I was having that life screening, we ran into the lady who is the head of 31 Backpacks.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't catch her name, but...
Laurel Mackey, I think.
That's who it was. And I just know that she has seen a need for some families there's a lot of families up here. And I don't know, there again, that can be kind of controversial, like how much help do you give people? How much food do you share with them? How many school supplies do you give to them? But obviously, these little kids, they didn't have any say in what kind of baggage they come into the world with. Whatever their parents are or aren't doing, they don't.
It's not their, like you're saying, so, part of that brokenness.
So, I'm sure, well, when we first came here, we kind of helped some with habitat, because there's some people who really want a good home to live in, and they're willing to help, do their part and have a good, safe place for them and their children. So our community has some, good, what do you call them, organizations, I guess, that would be, and then of course our church, I think we try to do things too, the best we can. Like helping here in our neighborhood, which we have never done, so I'm not saying I was on that, but leaf raking and all that stuff that, or picking up debris, what a good thing to do for people who just couldn't get her done,
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So I mean, I love the call too, of even just, who is it in my life? It brings it really close to home, Who is it on my street or in my maybe larger family, who's that friend who is just having a kind of go of it and could use a little cool cup of water.
Exactly. My mom always just would say, use a cool hand on a warm head. I mean, just bring some calming to a situation or some relief. And I do. I mean, we can all credit different people, but moms and dads out there have a great role in how their kids carry on things that God would want them to do, and I think my parents did a good job of that, to say, share this with those people, or take extra soup to that person, or whatever it is, to bring them, like you said, calm and support and peace. And that's what God wants us to do, and look, He did it for us, so how can we be? But it's easy. I mean, like that parable, oh my gosh, I thought about that too, because how easy it is for us to turn around and be just as demanding or unfair, and then our God has just given us all His grace and mercy, so we better shape up.
Well, I couldn't say it any better myself, Dala, so let's end on that. Thank you for for being on the
we don't
show.
click our cups at the end of this, do we?
Well, we don't have to. I'll finish my cup instead. That's how I'll end.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the shout out to those different orgs, and if you're interested in wanting to get involved, you can talk to Dala or talk to me, or go to the orgs themselves, or but no, we're glad to have you in this community, and as a voice of wisdom.
Help us. No, I don't know about that.
See, that's the wisdom.
Plenty of gray hair. I don't know about wisdom, but anyway.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dala. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless your week.
Thank you very much. Yep. All right.